Hello and welcome to Bo Beats. So in a recent video I asked you guys to leave some questions and you left a ton of great questions. So in this video I'm going to answer some of your questions about music production, life and coffee. Alright, so Martin asks, what do you think is the best piece of gear for the money? It can be a synth or a different instrument as long as it makes cool sounds. Something that I think is worth every penny is something like the Machine MK2 or the Machine Studio. The reason being is that it's such a great hardware-software combination that is just worth every penny. So I think that is a really nice bang for the buck if I'm to choose one thing. Now I might butcher this name. Is it Ogre or Ogre or... I'm not sure. He asks, what is your opinion on the Novation Base Station 2? Well, first off, I have never owned one, but I've seen a ton of videos and it seems like a very affordable and versatile monosynth. I would probably rank it as one of the best monosynths out there for the price, especially since you can get it for around, say, 300 euros used. I mean, and it can't just do bass sounds, it can do a lot of different sounds. It can, for example, do great lead sounds. I really want one. It's just that I can't really justify buying one right now because I have other synths that do pretty much the same thing. But still, I really like it. And I'm sorry for butchering your name. So Neil asks, hey, here's a sincere question. Ever do any composing for video games, indie or otherwise? And the answer is yes, I've done composing for some video games, but it's games that haven't been released, so mostly indie titles. My dear friend Matt asks, no one ever has ever had to force me to drink coffee. Well, Matt, that isn't a question, it's a statement. Just me and Matt, good pals. Amazing artist, by the way. I'll leave his link down in the description if you want to check out his channel. He got some great stuff over there. So the user Nodi, or Nodi, asks, what is your day job? Well, you're one amongst several who have asked the question, so roll the clip. So one question several of you were asking is, what is my day job? Well, I have 3 workplaces. I'm here at the university teaching educational science part-time. I'm also managing 2 different psychotherapy offices in primary healthcare as a psychotherapist. So basically my work consists of teaching students stuff about education, psychology and so on, giving them boring assignments to do and nagging at them and so on, and also helping people with anxiety and depression. So that is pretty much my day jobs, multiple ones. So John asks, I've already seen your rant video, but will you be buying Machine Jam? We'd love to see you rock it. Well, thank you, John. I'd love to rock it too, and it looks really interesting. I'd love to use it, I'd love to have it, but at the moment I can't really justify the cost because I'm sort of moving more towards hardware at the moment, and you know, the Arturia, the drum machine, their Brute drum machine was just announced, and it's not that much more expensive than a Machine Jam. So I got the Machine Studio. Well, it's just hard to justify, but I would love to have one. So Native Instruments, we can let bygones be bygones. Is that the saying? And you could sponsor me with one? I don't know. I don't know. Nodi also asks, do you ever go through creative lulls where you don't feel inclined to make music? Yeah, I definitely go through those creative lulls or even creative depressions where I don't feel like creating anything. I've even had long breaks from music. I've had a period of my life where like a year or 2 where I didn't really make anything. I wasn't very creative. I was really focused on work instead. And you wanted to know a little bit of what I think about how to reinvigorate your interest. Well, so one thing I think is getting interesting hardware that sort of sparks your creativity, that makes you or forces you in some way to think about music or create the creative process in a new way. So that's one thing. I know I go on about it, but for me getting the circuit was, you know, something like that. But for me, it has had a lot to do with being around the right kind of people, IRL or on forums. Just finding those like-minded people and sharing your passion with them, and getting your thoughts out there, talking to people, enjoying their work, letting them comment on your work. I mean, that's sort of what often has taken me from a creative lull or a creative depression into being more creative again. But if being social is not really your thing, I think it's still important to not bash yourself too much when you have a sort of a break from being creative. I think you should just embrace that you can't be creative all the time, and try and do something else. You could also try to be creative in a different way. You know, for me, I do some painting, I write a little bit, I work with video, and sort of when I'm stuck in a rut with my music, I sort of try to be creative in a different way. Because here's a life lesson that I've learned. It's not what you do, it's that you do something, that you stay creative. That's the kind of key aspect here. That you don't let yourself be pacified, regardless of the reasons. So try and stay creative. Amunraya or Joey asks, what is your absolute favorite synthesizer? That I own? Well, it's the analog keys. It's such a deep synthesizer and I really enjoy working with it. If I am to pick a synthesizer that I don't own, I would say the Prophet 6, because I really like the sound, and it, unlike the OB6, doesn't look like some American crap with the blue colors of ugh. So Steven asks if I have any advice on how to mix. And yeah, Steven, I got an advice for you that I don't always follow myself, but it's a really good one. Use EQ. Focus on learning how to use EQ to get the sound that you want, and use reference tracks to see where you're at. Also use volume automation on the different tracks in order to create a different feeling in different parts of the song, and learn how to use this, because you can get really far with EQ and volume automation. So that would be my advice to you. Fusion asks, what do you think about ABBA, the Swedish band? I don't really think anything about ABBA. I think I don't really like them, but I do love Money, Money, Money. Ulla asks, did you stop having commercials in your videos? If so, why, and how much did you get from an average clicked video? Do you consider starting a Patreon account? I actually got all my videos monetized. It's just a standard setting from YouTube. I do not really own any money on one video. It's so little. So at the moment it's below 50 euros, I think, per month. And yeah, I have considered starting a Patreon account, and I will probably do it, but I don't want to do it right now because I don't have the time. And if I ask people for some kind of financial backing or support, I really want to be able to deliver. So that's sort of my philosophy on this. Paul, a long-term viewer, asks, what inspires, motivates you to make music? Well, I talked a bit about it earlier, and it's about interacting with people. That's really what inspires me. You know, having discussions, talking about things. So it comes down to me wanting to make something that other people can relate to. That's why I'm making more videos than I make music at the moment, or at least why I combine the two things, because I feel like people can relate to this on a different level than if it just made music. He also asks, how would you advise someone that is maybe too hard on themselves if things don't work right away in the studio? Well, this is a kind of tricky question, Paul, because it depends a lot if you think you got a good idea going and you just feel stuck, or if you're stuck because the idea is not good enough. I would say learn to start over. If you get stuck, if you don't feel like you can sort of work this project at the moment, try and leave it. Do something else, start a new project. Because if something doesn't feel right, I mean, oftentimes you can bash your head into the wall and not get anywhere. So my advice would be to learn to recognize that feeling when you're bashing your head into a wall, but also at the same time, you kind of need to learn how to persevere. If you know that you easily get stuck at a certain point in the process, you sort of need to devote yourself to that process. Set the time, say I will work at the mixing for 2 hours, 1 hour, or I will work with the chorus for 1 hour, and just do it. Just do the work that hour and see if sort of it nets results. And sometimes if it doesn't net a result, maybe this song idea isn't strong enough. And maybe you should just, you know, start over, do something else. Because there's always a new song to be made, really. Brown Paste, which is a pretty funny name actually, Brown Paste. What is that? Is that like shit toothpaste? Anyway, he asks, do you like 1970s synthesizer cosmic music? Well, I like Jean-Michel Jarre, or Jarre as he's called in Sweden. It's sort of one of my main idols, if you can call it that. I really enjoy his music, and he's one of the big artists that I felt influenced by. Beat Groove Rhythm asks, how do you keep your facial hair so symmetrical? Well, I use disposable shavers, is it called? Shavers? And a beard trimmer. And having a firm jawline like this, like a nice jawline and looking good, also helps with keeping it symmetrical. But I realize I'm not very well shaven right now. Maybe I need to fix that. SM asks, how would you recommend someone proceed from a knowledge of synths to learning how to produce, mix and master tracks? It's funny, SM, because I kind of started the other way around. I started learning how to record, how to mix using kind of old school gear, and then I learned a little bit about mastering. So I come from the other way around. So from my point of view, here's some advice. Practice a lot. You just have to do it. It's very technical. Learn the tools. EQ and compression are probably the most important ones. Learn how to use automation, volume automation, in order to create a different vibe. Always use reference tracks in order to reference what you were working on and compare it to another fully mastered song that you think sounds nice. If you can, leave mastering to other professionals with better gear and knowledge. I try to do that sometimes, but often I end up, you know, just doing it as sort of a fake, easy way that works for me. If you have to do the mastering yourself, I would look at a lot of tutorials on YouTube on how to do it. Matthew Brown asks, do you have gas for anything at the moment? I think I'm gassing the most right now over the Electron Analog Rhythm, because I've never had a dedicated drum machine and it looks really solid. Today I realized that Arturia are releasing a drum machine, and that one looks very promising as well. And about the coffee, roll the clip. Alright, so I got the question, what is my favorite brand of coffee? And I'll show you. Here's my cabinet of coffee. So this is my favorite politically correct brand of coffee that I like. It's by Arvid Nordquist, but it's actually a really nice sort of dark roasted coffee that I really enjoy. Mr. Sneak Freak 96, also brilliant name. What artists inspired you to create music? Also, favorite analog synth. Well, the favorite analog synth I've already answered. It's the Electron Analog Keys. And well, artists, Jean-Michel Jarre, my sort of one idol. Faithless inspired me heavily, but also a Swedish rapper named Petter. Excalibur asks, I'm just beginning to get into producing, and my biggest problem is finding where to start with making a beat or a song. Does this become less of a problem the more I keep making stuff, and how do you get over that? To answer this question, I took out a little candle here. It's actually quite a complicated question to answer, because it has to do with what sparks creativity, and this is very individual. It's kind of hard to quantize, hard to technically describe in a video, but I do think that it does get easier with experience, with practice, because you sort of learn what makes you tick, what sort of gets you going, what kind of things, what kind of mood, what kind of sounds, and everything. You learn by experience. There are no shortcuts, but I do think that picking gear, picking workflows that you feel actually helps you, makes you create things fast, it makes you get going. For example, when I use my circuit or I use Machine Studio, those are kind of projects that really makes me do things fast and get started. And I think that's one key thing, to have something that lets you capture that inspiration, that feeling that you're having. So I'm not sure if it helps, but this is what my perspective on it.